Good afternoon, folks. This is Addy Zaddikin, chosen one of whatever space that I happen to occupy. This is my actually third YouTube channel. My other two have gotten booted, but this is a great afternoon, and we want to welcome everybody for joining us today, going live today for my first full-length and first in-person interview of 2021, and I'm very happy and fortunate, grateful to have John OLoughlin joining me today, aka McDuff of the McDuff Lives channel, on which I made an appearance earlier today. So we want to thank anybody who's tuning in again, and I want to thank you, John, for agreeing to chat with me today. I'm really looking forward to asking you questions and learning more about you.
The same here, Addy, and obviously it's an honor to be the first interviewee on the Addy Adkins channel for 2021, and so I'm very happy. I very seldom get interviewed, to be honest with you. I think maybe Paul Cottrell and maybe one other person have. So a lot of stuff maybe folks haven't heard before. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm looking forward to it all. And could we start at the beginning, if that's okay, John? Where are you originally from? Where were you born?
I was born in October 1952 in Washington, D.C. I can't remember if it was D.C. General or another one of the hospitals back then, but no, in D.C.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. And you actually are not far from the area in which you were born. Then pretty close to DC here on Mystery Island, which is it's pretty interesting. But before we get to university and beyond, where did you go to high school, and what type of high school student were you?
Well, we lived in a neighborhood called Captain's Cove. And Captain's Cove is right next to the old Fort Washington, the fort that George Webb has reported on a lot. And we did some live shows up there a couple of, maybe almost 2 years ago now. But right next to that fort was where my parents bought a house, and I was living there in high school. When I was in the 8th grade, my parents asked me if I was interested in going to Catholic school, and had never occurred to me before, but gradually I became convinced that I'd get a better education if I did that. And so we had to go and take a test and applied, and I got into Bishop McNamara High School, which is in Forestville, Maryland. And at that time, it was boys only. And there was a sister school called Lorraine, which was in Suitland, maybe about 5 or 6 miles away. So what happened was we would ride the bus together, and it's 25 miles from Captain's Cove up to Forestville. So that was a large part of it, was riding the bus every morning and every evening. So at the Catholic school, I took 4 years there, and I'm very pleased with the education I got there. I think it was a good choice in terms of preparing me for college. However, it was not the best choice for preparing one for social life and becoming comfortable around girls. If you're not around them all day, it's a different experience from the kids that went to public school. Very different, I'd say.
Okay. Wow. And before we get to girls, maybe later, but I wanted to ask about because we know you became an attorney later on. Were you a straight A student in high school and one of the guys at the top of the class?
No, actually, I wasn't. I was more what you might call a B or B plus student in high school, and pretty much the same in college. I really had a dread of getting D's. And one time when I was in law school, I got a D. And I went to speak to the teacher of that class. It was real property. And I said, I'm just devastated that I got a D. What can is it going to hurt my career? What am I going to do about this? And he reassured me. He said, don't worry about it. Lots of people get D's on their in their college and law school courses, and just don't worry about it. So I of course, said, okay. I signed up for advanced real property the next year, and I aced it. So that erased my shame. But I was very conscious of not. I didn't really need an A. I just needed to have a B, and I was happy with a C plus too. So don't think I was any kind of a great student. I did a little bit more than the minimum. That's maybe all I could say about law school and college.
Did you find that words and history, social sciences, social studies, shall we say, came easier to you than, say, mathematics and or physics and the sciences, or was it a little both, or what were you interested in then? Do you remember?
Sure, that's a very perceptive question. I don't know how you knew that was pretty much, you just told the story of my college career, because with my education from Bishop McNamara High School, I had good grades. I got into William and Mary, and at William and Mary, I thought I was probably pretty smart. So when the guy you had to go through a course in college, you have to go through a sign up, like a gymnasium with tables all over the place, and your assignment is to fill out your semester's courses, and you'd have to have 3 or 4 courses to get your 15 credits a semester. So the idea was you went around to wherever you were interested in and tried to get into that course. The interest I had at the time was physics. So I went over to the physics table, and at the physics table, not only did they sign me up, but they offered me, and I of course accepted, being pretty proud of my own intellect at the point, saying, okay, I'll take the advanced physics lab. And so that killed me. I could not handle it. I was lab partners with a really beautiful woman who I ended up dating for a while, and her math skills were twice as good as mine. She already understood both differential and integral calculus when she arrived there. Whereas in my Catholic school, as much as I thought I got a great education, they hadn't offered, and I hadn't learned any calculus. So when the professor, a classic physics professor, the bald head, the hair sticking out above both ears, and bottom glasses, okay, literally. And in a foreign accent, I can't remember if it was German or what, but it was a thick accent. And he got up there, and the first thing he put on the board, I'll never forget it, it was a triple integral sign. And I had no idea how to do integral calculus. And this was a triple integral calculus problem that he put up on the board. And I had to work so hard to understand exactly what the question was. And it really, by the time I was done with 1 year of physics, I knew that was not my field. And so I said, okay, well, mathematics, I'll go to mathematics. And I actually, Addy, took a lot of advanced mathematic courses, including calculus of many variables, which I guess that was my atonement for not having understood it in physics. So I took that and passed it. But again, I wasn't thrilled with math. I didn't find those wonderful epiphanies that many mathematicians talk about when they see something beautiful like the Lorentz transform, and they say, oh, that's, I didn't have those experiences. It was just work to me, figuring out numbers and calculations. So I knew I didn't want to be a math major, and so what was left but social sciences? And I had taken a couple of government classes, and I really found myself loving the teaching of government. And so I got my professor, Roger W. Smith, was a mentor to me. And I took at least 3 courses that he taught. And because he was a great teacher, he inspired me to get back and to take some history courses. And so I really had a nice, broad, liberal education. At the same time, I have to admit that I was taking as much music as I could, because that was my true love. I just had never had enough training as a kid. I had really no training except for on the trombone, which was my instrument back in high school and college. But other than that, I wasn't sophisticated in like pianists get. And I really wanted to know more. So I took, I think it was like 24 credits of music while I was doing everything else, and managed to squeeze in a couple of years of piano lessons, which have really been profitable for me, as I now can understand music from the pianist's point of view, which, you know, that is where the composer's minds are thinking when most of them are composing from the piano keyboard. And so I really did get a broad education, which has from time to time in my life become very useful, although I never went back to the math.
It's interesting you say that because music is, you know, very mathematical. So it's kind of counterintuitive in a way that you would find yourself interested in that. But I do want to ask more about music, but that initial physics class, that was your freshman year?
Yeah.
It was? Okay.
You know, that was 1970. My dad was still alive then. He and my mom drove down to Williamsburg and dropped me off. And that was really the last time I saw my dad before he went into the hospital. So it
was when he dropped you off for college?
Yeah, dropped me off in September of 1970, and he died in June of 71.
What do you remember about that day?
About the day that he dropped me off?
Do you remember much?
Oh, yeah. I do. I remember thinking that I'm on my own now. And I went up to the dormitory. It was Yates Dormitory for the William and Mary fans out there. And I was up on the third floor in the middle. And what they had done was to assign the football team to that floor. But they didn't want to put two football players in the same room, because they wanted the football players, I guess, to mingle with us peons and regular people. Well, it turned out that I had been assigned a room to one of the star football players. Won't mention his name, but he was terrific. He was huge. He was powerful, and he had got into the room first. And so he had kind of decided which side of the room was his, and that was the side next to the door. And then he had noted that I had a bulletin board above my bed and he didn't have, so he thought he needed the bulletin board. So he took it down from my bed and put it over in front on top of his bed. Then he needed a place to plug in his refrigerator, because he needed a refrigerator to keep all of his power drinks in. So he plugged his refrigerator in on my side of the room. And when I got up to the room, all this was a fait accompli. And I looked around and he came in and he said, well, this is, I did this, so that'll be your side of the room. And when he left and pulled the corkboard back off of his wall and put it back on my wall. And I don't remember what else it was, but I had switched it around to the way that I wanted it. And man, this guy came back and, with his great big chest and arms and everything, he's looking at me. John, I can't fucking believe it. And he started to just rant and rave all around the room. And finally he got tired of ranting and raving. And I think he knew that he better not do anything physical. So eventually he left, and suddenly he was living in a different room. And I had the whole room to myself. So that's a story I'll never forget. But it is my father's character reflected in me. And the story's bottom line is that, I'm not going to take being abused. If you want something from me, ask me for it. I'll give it to you. I'm very generous. He could have had anything he wanted, but you don't just take it. and I will not be bullied. That's part of my character.
And you mentioned before too that you know, just going back to the physics class, you were taking math as well in college that included calculus courses.
Oh yeah, of course I had to get the calculus so that I could do the math for the physics. So I was taking calculus and advanced physics at the same time my first year, and as well as English, which English took up so much time because you get these big thick books that you have to read, all these poems and all of this essays, and you're getting hundreds of pages to read every week from your English teacher, as well as trying to figure out these math problems. Well, my first year I really had taken on too much, because not only that, I was also in the band, and in the marching band we practiced 3 days a week, and you had to go across campus to the football field, or the practice football field. And I marched around with a baritone horn for 2 hours every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as well as trying to do my schoolwork. And it was more than I should have took on. But I wanted to do everything. I wanted to be a great college student. And I didn't mind if I didn't get A's and A pluses. I wanted to be a successful college student. And I also loved the idea of having a broad general education, as opposed to being a specialist in one little thing. So it really did come out the way that it should have, I think.
And what was your degree that you ended up with?
In government.
It was government. Okay. And
Yeah.
that was from William and Mary, you said?
Yes.
And what is, looks like Andy brought something here. Is this a different school, or is this?
Oh, that's my Georgetown diploma.
Okay. So this is your JD then, correct?
Yeah.
And before we show it in a second here, how, because there was a gap, right, between you matriculating from undergraduate school and then going to law school.
Right.
And what happened in between that time period?
Well, I graduated from William and Mary in 1974. And other than taking the civil service exam, there wasn't any real careers that I was interested in. I took the civil service exam. I guess I got an A minus, which wasn't enough to get a job back then. You kind of had to have an A or an A plus. So that kind of depressed me in a way. And I thought, I can't get that job. And who else was hiring? Busch Gardens, the brewery was hiring for management and stuff. But yeah, I'll try to help you.
Yeah. So this is
hold that up there. But that's my diploma from Georgetown.
This is John's JD from University of Georgetown, courtesy of Andy. Thank you, sir. And
so there was 2 years in between.
2 years. Okay.
And I had not made up my mind what I wanted to do with my life. So I just kept, working at Colonial Williamsburg, pushing plates, as we call it, and working in the nice big dining rooms. And honestly, Addy, it's one of the things that is one of my biggest pet peeves to this day, is that they've completely changed the idea of service. I was trained in standard American service, and also a little bit of what they call French. And I understand, the idea that you don't disturb your guests if they're talking. You bring them a glass of water without making them ask for it. And there's just certain ways that you act as a professional waiter that are completely gone. And you go into a restaurant today and you experience somebody, well, if I'm talking to my wife, and the waitress comes up and just starts yakking at us as if we weren't even talking. I think they're trained to be rude, frankly. And, because it fits some corporate model that they're trying to break us all down into, people that just consume, as opposed to have a conversation and have lunch for the purpose of having an elevated talk that used to be the purpose of lunches with folks.
So you were serving and bartending during that period as well, you said?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my thing down in Colonial Williamsburg. And I did that for almost 2 years. And that was my grandfather, my dad's father, of course, that was kind of my mentor then. He was looking after me from afar up in his rest home in Connecticut, where he had, by the way, by that time lost the lower parts of his legs to diabetes. So he was confined to a wheelchair, but he looked after me and wrote me letters all the time and encouraged me. And one of the things that he said was, you know, are you considering going to law school? And I hadn't really ruled it out, but, you know, after 2 years of just hanging around the college town, I was kind of feeling like it's time to move on. So I did make some applications. Was very fortunate to get into Georgetown. And so I moved back home with my mom and commuted to Georgetown from suburban Prince George's County. And, you know, I was in the evening division. So it was a 4-year program. And I worked for local law firms in the daytime doing investigations and research and just being a law clerk.
Okay. And how did you pay for school out of pocket then for law school? Or?
I did, yeah. It was amazing. I might have been the last person that ever put themselves through Georgetown, because at that time, I think it was about $7,500 a semester for me, which I could do. You know, I could just barely do it. I did have to borrow one time. I borrowed $5,000, and fortunately paid it off right away after I got out of law school. So I avoided the student debt trap, and I encourage people to try not to get into that debt. It looks like a good deal because at least you get to go to college, you get to get that degree, but I tell you, it's an albatross around your neck that you can't get rid of because they don't let you discharge it in bankruptcy. That, I think, is unconstitutional, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, I believe it. It doesn't go away even with your death. The student loan debt, is that what you're referring to there, John?
Yeah, student loan debt. I was very fortunate. They didn't pay me much. You know, I was starting like $3.50 an hour when I was a law clerk in 1970, 71, 70. I mean 76 and 7. And you know, I might have made $5 an hour at some point, but when you're just going to school, you don't have the degree, and you really desire to learn the business, then I think that the way they think is, you know, you're only getting a little bit of a salary, but you're getting a hell of an education in how to really literally practice law on a daily basis. And that's true. I did.
Okay. And how long were you a law clerk for before you moved on to something else?
Well, 4 years. When I graduated from Georgetown in 1980, first thing I did was my dear sister Lisa gave me a plane ticket to London, round trip, and so I went over to London and then traveled to Ireland for my first time in 1980 during the summer. And as soon as I got back, I just started looking for a job and took the first one that came along. I started working with a local personal injury attorney, and he told me I had to sign up for the public defender. So I did that, and I signed up for a couple of, you know, referral programs such as the teachers union. And from there, I built up a law practice. I didn't stay with that lawyer very long, but then I just once again went out, did some interviews, and took a job with another firm, which was located in DC. And that was a lot of fun. That was defending the taxi cab drivers of DC in motor vehicle accidents on behalf of Yellow Cab Company of DC and other the big companies that, you know, now are kind of getting driven out of business by the financial system and the Ubers and everything.
Okay, yeah, we were talking. I think it was last week about about law and working law, and you said most of them are either car accidents or domestic disputes. Is that what you said? Or you said there were like 2 or 3 kind of types of lawsuits that occupy most of lawyers' time in aggregate. Is that correct?
I don't remember saying it, but that's about right. I mean, if you are going to just hang out a shingle like I did and be in private practice, then you are going to find yourself. Um, a lot of people say, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to specialize. So you become a boutique. All I do is real estate conveyances, or all I do is high-end divorces. And those folks, they're probably financially the most astute, because that's where the people with the money go, is to the people that have set up a niche, and it's all that they do, the boutique law firms. But I think maybe following my father's instincts to just want to help people, I just decided to become the person that hangs out the shingle and sees what comes in the door. And that's what I did for over 30 years. And it really is a privilege to represent people that have, different walks of life. Uh, I remember some people so well and so dearly that I used to represent. But it's a tough way to go. You don't make a lot of money. Maybe once you might get lucky, like you get a huge personal injury case that comes in, and that gives you some money that you can finance and buy a lot of ads, and then you have a practice going on. But if all you do, kind of like me, is to try to make sure that your clients win their case and don't get screwed, or don't end up in jail, and I don't look at it. I never looked at it from a business point of view, and that is, if you want to make a living at it, I would say probably you ought to specialize and not try to do what I did. But if you try to do what I did, then you're right. You're going to end up with domestic relations, automobile accidents, and criminal. And those are the three areas that most lawyers that do that general practice thing end up having to manage. And, it's not always fun to handle those cases, especially the domestic relations ones, or, they're difficult, and the emotional burden. You feel the client's emotional burdens, and when children are involved, it's particularly can be heartbreaking. It's the case that I remember. I lost a domestic case involving children, and I just couldn't believe that the judge ruled against us. But it happens, and that's not about money. That's about trying to do the best you can for a client in a difficult situation. And sometimes those domestic cases are the ones that can really make a lawyer feel bad. I thought I could win that. I can't believe the judge didn't. But those days are past now, my friend.
Yeah, I imagine. I think maybe for a lot of lawyers, it's a disheartening experience, perhaps, coming to grips with the reality of the justice system, particularly if they are going into that field to try to do good work as well. What do you think? I think that would be maybe a shock to a lot of lawyers to figure that out. People who might be naive to how the justice system works in reality in the United States.
Well, I think that's a good argument for working for a law firm before you try to practice law. If you're going to do criminal law or constitutional law or civil rights law, if you want to be an advocate, then you're going to have to learn where the pitfalls are and why it's such a struggle to get people's rights to them. And the only way to do that is to just get involved in it. And if you need to be a volunteer for ACLU or some other organization that trains people, so that you can get trained and understand that the fight for rights on behalf of someone who is basically indigent, and that's almost all of us, by the way, because if you start paying for a lawyer's fees in a case that's going to a court of appeals, if it's coming out of your pocket, it's going to hurt you. So people that have just limited means are going to have their rights deprived, and sometimes it's just because they can get away with it, because they think, well, this person doesn't have the power to fight back. And that's why I think the idea of legal services and the idea of ACLU, the idea of is my father's idea. All he really wanted ever to do was to help people that were less fortunate than himself. That's what I think my idea was, when instead of going for the money, I went for the skills, the trial skills, the ability to learn where the traps are, learn how to make sure that you don't fall into them. And, you know, as a trial lawyer, I feel that I understand the world a whole lot better now. So it's worth it. And it's worth it even if I didn't, make that money and build the mansion and have the sports cars. It's worth it because I was involved. I was there. I was pacing the halls waiting for the juries to come back. And that's an experience that teaches me a lot about how things really, really are in this world.
And you still have cases that you're working on, John? Is that correct?
No, not really. I've got a few files that seem to not ever want to get closed, but I don't practice law anymore in an active way. I do practice law in the sense of I am a lawyer. I have my licenses, and when I'm not giving legal advice, but the books that I choose to read, the principles that I talk about on my show, I think that's practicing law. It's just practicing it in a way that is not pecuniary. It's just to help share my expertise, such as it is, and the things that I think are important. Looking back over my life, that I want everyone to be aware of.
And you mentioned your father and his practicing law as well. Did he do similar work, general law work like you described, or was he more specialized, or did he not practice law? He just, because I know he did get his JD, as you mentioned.
Right. My dad would have probably been a judge advocate with the Navy if he had stayed with the Navy, but after World War II in early 1946, he was teaching actually as teaching naval science at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. When he got a call from home that things were really, really bad involving his father, whom, Tom Sr. or Grandpa, he needed him, and he called. So he answered the call. He declined the commission with the Navy and went home and took his law school courses at University of Connecticut, where he graduated, I think, in 1949. And at that time, there was a lot of pressure on the family, on him, that I don't know the details of, but it was bad enough for him to just want to get out, to just leave. Because I'm sure that they were wanting him to follow whatever the Bissells wanted him to do, or the powers of the old elite of Hartford, Connecticut wanted him to do. And he probably had, from the war and, his experiences with the soldiers and sailors and the Marines and the officers that he worked with on the Nashville and in various island hopping campaigns. I think he didn't want to be among the elites. He wanted to be among his fellow warriors from the war, and not go for the white shoe law firm job that I think they wanted him to take. So again, a lot of pressure was exerted, enough to make him just want to get out of there. And so I'm not sure how he got recruited to the FBI, but when he was, he accepted that. And so instead of practicing law on his own, like he probably would have liked to do, I think he just made a decision that the FBI was going to be his career, and there he went.
Okay. Okay.
So that
Excellent.
was in about 51 when he 50 or 51 when he left Connecticut and joined the FBI and ended up in Atlanta, Georgia, where he met my mother.
Oh, in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. I did not know that. It was Atlanta was the meeting place. And what do you remember about, because I believe I started high school, but what do you remember about him growing up? Because you said your most recent memory where he was still healthy was when he dropped you off for college. But just working back, like you remember that summer before college, did you guys hang out a lot or get some that time to spend together in the years leading up to college?
No, unfortunately, those were the years when he was in his working at Saxa. And so just to make it clear, my college was from the fall of 70 to the spring of 74. Okay. So I was in high school from 66 to 70. It was in 1967 that the events of TDY happened. So that now we know why he wasn't available to us as kids. He would he would work long hours or come home exhausted and not be able to interact with us. I couldn't even ask him. I remember asking him to help me with my Latin because I knew he had Latin, and he was before this episode with Saxa and the Vietnam War and the Laos and all of these secret ops took over his mind. He was very generous and loved to talk about history. Maybe that's why I like history so much, because we had those dinner table conversations in which he was the the main speaker. Uh, Maybe once or twice a week, he would. This is before when he was with the FBI, right? And he could just after we finished eating, he could just start talking, and he would tell you something about, say, Queen Elizabeth or uh, the Civil War or historical things that he found interesting, and would just give us a little short story about it from his own education at Loomis and Harvard, and on his own, of course. He was very knowledgeable about history. So he was a dominant feature when he was there, when he was mentally present with us. But starting in about 64 or 5 was when they started, when something happened that involved them recruiting him or trying to recruit him into their dope selling, their dope routine, the CIA. And that's part of what I've been investigating for the past 7 or 8 years, is to follow up on the little bit of leads that I've had. And the books that I've read are 90% of them are there because they help me understand more and more the context of what was going on with my dad. But the answer to your question is no, we didn't have that, the idea of, this is my beloved son and I approve of him. I never got that hand on the shoulder or the transformation from child to man that psychologically children need, from boys or girls. They need some way to be drawn into the adult world, and to not have had that from my father was a loss. But the reason for it was because he was sacrificing himself to try to save this country. And that was the higher duty. And it's completely understandable to me now with the perspective of all the studies that we've been doing. So it was not an ideal father-son relationship because he just couldn't. You know, guys that are playing that 5D chess against sophisticated warriors trying to save our republic, that, it's a World War II veteran, a guy that knows what's at stake. If you lose your freedom, if you lose your government, if you lose control over what happens in Washington, D.C., then anything can happen. And he knew that. So it was his duty, and he did it to the best of his ability.
And he was at the top of his class in law school, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
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 And was he, to your knowledge, like that in throughout school? Was he one of the top academic students?
It's funny. When George Webb and I went to Connecticut back in the fall of 2019, we went up to Loomis School, and while I was there, I was able to get a copy of the transcript of his grades. And like you, I was expecting straight A's, but no, it was pretty much like me. He had C's and B's and B pluses, and he was not a person that got straight A's by any means, and I was a little bit relieved to think that. Now, as far as Harvard, I don't know. I have not investigated his career at Harvard yet. I kept thinking I was going to go up to Boston and Cambridge and visit and meet with the archivist there, and like I did at Loomis. But that'll have to wait until this quote virus quote unquote thingy is passed, if it ever does.
So his undergraduate degree was in Harvard or at Harvard?
Right. Yeah. He was an English major.
Okay. That's seems like a kind of a classic undergrad to grad in terms of law schools. Is a lot of English majors will go to law school as well. But I'm interested to know how he did at Harvard as well. I find it also interesting the difference between his grades at Loomis and then at law school. Might be something about like the competitive law school environment that you obviously are you have experience with, John, that maybe brought out his competitive edge. I don't know. I mean, he definitely seems like a guy who thrives and well, obviously, thrives in very controlled, disciplined environments, finds a way to rise to the top. And, some people just have that gift. But yeah, that's quite interesting how he's, the number one in his law school, but then he has, more or less average grades in high school. I think it shows that, just because you've done something in the past or you couldn't do something in the past, that you can't not do it in the future, cannot learn it in the future as well.
Excellent point. And it hadn't occurred to me to think, hey, how did he change from a B student to number one in the law school class? I'm going to have to think about that. Very interesting question. But it is. I hope it's inspirational to people that might have been in the middle of their class in high school to think, I can't do anything special. I was only just in the middle of the class. It's just like me. I got a D in real property law in law school, and I didn't really care who knows it. It was like, but it was shame to me. It was like, oh no, how did I do so bad on the test? And I beat myself up over and over again. Don't do that. McDuff didn't have straight A's. I don't have straight A's, and you don't need straight A's. What you need is a sense of purpose, of vocation, like my dad had. And even though he probably would have been happier doing what I did, which maybe is why I did it, to hang out that shingle and try to help anybody that came through the door the best you could. Instead of doing that, he ended up in the FBI and then in the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and in a way, trying to continue that mission to help average people, to help people that otherwise would be victimized by big forces in the world. And I think in the FBI, he had that sense of, yes, I'm fighting crime. Yes, we're fighting the spies from the communist countries. Yes, we're fighting the mafia. Yes, we are, fidelity, bravery, integrity. That is something that I think he could get behind, and he was probably mainly happy with that career. I don't think he had any idea what was going to happen when he went over to the Joint Chiefs. I do know that he was recruited. A couple of names that I have from the early Defense Intelligence Agency, and these are indications that the DIA was, aware of who he was, and to try to make a connection there when he was in the separate office called SAXA. But the things that we've learned now about how the CIA was obviously watching him, trying to control him, and trying to use mind control programs. And I'm really not prepared to talk much about that in detail yet, but I do now see that is exactly what they were doing. It was Dulles and his ilk that saw where my dad was as a position they wanted to control. And so in order to do that, they tried to control him.
What did you find was the most difficult part of being a lawyer, both in school and in practice? Because I'm sure those were very different. But yeah, what do you think that the hardest part of school was? And then what do you think the hardest part of practicing law was for you?
The hardest part of law school is reading all those cases. Every course you take, you get this great big fat book, and it's maybe got 100 or 200 different law cases in it. And what you need to do is to brief those cases. So you open it up, and it says, Hadley versus Baxendale, and that's a case from Great Britain. That is a foundation of American law. And then you start with that one, and you make categories. You say, here's the facts, here's the analysis, the judgment of the court, and notes. And you do that for every case that you read, so that when you get quizzed on it, you've got it quick in your head. You've made this brief, and it's tedious. It takes forever to get through those thick books, and you have to really be dedicated to maintain that part of it. To me, the good part of it is the lectures. I had some great teachers, so many fascinating people with real careers in important areas of the law, that I got to listen to them explain torts or contracts or criminal procedure. And the personality of the teacher is part of what made it okay for me. I would read the books because I wanted to understand the lectures that were coming about the books. And that worked for me. So now, practicing law, the hardest part about practicing law, I would say, is discriminating between cases you can take and cases you can't take. A lot of times somebody would come in with a very difficult, sad situation, and you want to help them, but there's no practical way that you can. One example of that would be the claims against federal workers' compensation cases. Okay. If somebody calls you up and says, my husband's injured, on the job, and they won't pay his wages, and they won't, settle the case, they won't do it, and we're going broke, and we're behind on our mortgage, and help, you're a lawyer, you're supposed to help people, right? And you feel like, yeah, I am a lawyer, and I am supposed to help people, but there's like one or two law firms that will handle those cases. And the reason is that you can't get paid. You can't get paid. If you put in 20 hours, 40 hours, and then you start doing these cases, and suddenly your whole week is filled up with these cases that there's no way that practically you're going to survive. you're not going to be able to pay your bills. You're not going to be able to pay your secretary. So, and there's a lot of cases like that that people have that most people, have just kind of given up on. And it's a shame. It's a moral dilemma that we have to face. At some point, you have to say no. A person has a very, very sketchy and difficult history to a car accident in which they got hurt, but they can't tell the story. They can't convince me that there was liability on the part of the person that has the insurance. So I would like to try and help that person, but I can't spend 40 hours a week on cases that are not going to produce some income. That's really the hardest part, is to be a good person, to feel like I'm doing that lawyer thing in the right way with a public spirit and the idea of helping the helpless if possible. At the same time, recognizing that it is a business. The way the world's set up right now, you can't just, you can't survive without concentrating on the business side of the practice. And I never liked the business side of it, really.
If you didn't practice law, what do you think you would have done instead, as a alternative career, instead of practicing law as you did? What would your choice be, do you think?
What would my choice be? Well, I'd still rather be a musician, of course. I right now I'd rather be singing Verdi and in Otello or something. That's what my love of my life is music, and that's what I'd be doing. And if it weren't for the way that my dad was gone so early in my life, that's what I would have done. I would have said, I want to go to a music school. I want to become a musician. So I didn't do that, but it kind of came out anyway, as I practiced law and was always, hanging out with the musicians and getting involved in small band gigs and, burning the candle on both ends.
I suppose that was pretty surprising for a lot of people in the music community to find out that one of the artists or participants was a lawyer. Was that surprising to a lot of musicians, or how did they react?
Oh, no, that's not unusual for people to be doing two jobs. It's to be a professional musician right now. It is a real financial challenge. That's the reason I couldn't do it. I knew I didn't have the experience or the skills, frankly, at that time. I needed more training, and so as I was grateful to have the participation of some really great musicians with me, but no, one of them would be an engineer, the other one would be an analyst with the EPA or something. But at the same time, people had gone to Oberlin, people had Boston College or Berkeley or degrees that were really, really fabulous musicians, and that I benefited a great deal just from being with them.
That's excellent. And when do you recall when the moment was that you first saw some of George Webb's work, and when was that? If you recall, do you remember? It was like a certain video that you clicked on, or?
Yeah, I think it was number 63. I remember it was, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 4 years ago now, that I saw him, and he was just showing his hands, but the content, maybe it was about Braverman. I don't even remember what the content was, but I noticed that this guy knew what he was talking about. It was stuff that I suspected, but I hadn't never seen anybody else give me any idea that I might be right about it. And I started to follow him because it just resonated with me. And, just lucky I saw him on YouTube. But from there, then it was him and Jason for a while. And they were still together. It was right at the end of their partnership, when, or whatever you want to call it. I don't mean it literally, but of their working together, that I picked up the phone and called Jason, and I said, I want to tell you guys something about my dad. And Jason said, well, come on down here. And so I got in the car and went down there, and I had prepared, before I called, I had prepared the orange notebook. So I had the real or original orange notebook with me when I went down there, and I gave it to George, and that, that really cemented right then. And after that, we went outside in the table outside of the little restaurant, and talked for at least 4 hours, all kinds of history, and we shared our interest and love of Shakespeare, and how that's how Let's Call Him McDuff came to be.
Oh, wow. That's excellent. And how long after did you guys meet from that initial, I think you said it was day 63 video?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How long was it until you're like, oh, I should meet this guy? And then it ended up happening.
I'm going to have to guess that, but I'm going to guess maybe 2 or 3 months.
Oh, wow. So it was pretty soon after you initially found him that you guys met up.
Yeah, because they weren't in DC. And then when they were in DC, that's when I said, I need to take advantage of them being here.
Okay. Wow. Excellent. And I want to ask you some questions about people you find influential. And I'm guessing I might be able to pick one of them, but the 3 most influential figures, I guess, in your life. And you can, if you want to,
that would be my mother, my father, and Andy.
that was totally gonna guess that one. Yeah, no, I think Andy's probably in my top 3 too. Yeah. Hopefully Andy's okay with that.
Climb insurance.
Oh, no, he's definitely in the top 3.
Well, I just had a couple kind of, we could do somewhat rapid fire questions, just maybe philosophical. They're going to jump around though. If you had $1 billion tomorrow, how would your life change, if at all?
I'd have secretaries. Oh man, I'd have 100 secretaries, and they'd all be working constantly because I got so much work I want to get done. Yeah. I remember when I was in my 40s, and I had a good friend who was in his 60s, as I am now, and he said, John, when you get into your 60s, you start realizing, that you wake up earlier in the morning, which is true. I wake up 5:30 because you got so much to do. You realize that you've only got so much time, and you've got all of these things that you really want to get done. So, I mean, that's kind of the way I feel right now, is that no longer do I have the leisure time that I thought I wanted to have when I got old, because I don't. I've got things that I've just got to get done. And may I go back to your previous question, just to, of course, to identify the real number 3, because as much as I love Andy, my uncle C.G. Riddle was number 3. He's my inspiration from my mother's side of the family. Her brother, an outstanding human being, a veteran of the Army Air Force, World War II, a terrific engineer, a graduate of Georgia Tech, and a man who could stop any conversations, could top anybody with the corniest puns that you have ever heard in your life. He was a master of witty conversation. So, and he, he was like the opposite of my dad in a way, because my dad was this Harvard intellectual type, but had been a sergeant in the Army and was a mechanic and a hands-on guy, but he knew all about electronics and one of the greatest experiences in my life was going to Radio Shack with my Uncle CG, because he would buy just the right little transistors and we'd go back and he had a dozen, radios and was a ham radio expert, and, just that type of stuff that was fascinating to me. It's why I thought I wanted to major in physics and math. But, maybe a week or two every other year with him was all we could do, because he couldn't just go to Atlanta. So, but I loved him so much, and I miss my Uncle CG, and so didn't want to let go of without answering your question, and making everybody aware of my Uncle CG, a wonderful, wonderful man.
Excellent. Thank you, John. And your answer to the $1 billion question actually leads me to a couple more questions, which I wanted to ask you. Segues quite nicely. I wanted to ask you about your morning routine, and then productivity as well. General productivity tips or things that you learned over your career working law, and then now working as a YouTube publisher, historian, etc. And those tips, I think, might be even more helpful depending. But either or, anything you've accrued that you think would be beneficial to someone who wants to maximize their work time.
Well, secretaries. The best thing to do is content, and I knew that I was not going to do the business side of this thing. I knew that I had content that I wanted to get out there, and so I just did it. And I just started pushing out my books and talking about my dad. Well, I was so nervous when I started. I didn't want to talk about my dad, but I thought, I've got to talk about my dad because I need to establish, certain facts in the public mind that understand that, this is real, who he was and how it affected me. And this story is not, something to just blow off. This is real stuff. So I started giving out, copies of letters from Hoover or pictures of admirals and stuff, and telling his story in a very kind of cryptic way in the first year or so. Let's see. What was the question again?
I was just asking about
workflow, right?
Yep.
Workflow. So it was when we had our when Jumping Mouse was she volunteered. She wanted to help in some way, and I don't remember how it happened, but I told her, I said, I can't do this. I can't build a website. I don't know how to maintain a YouTube page and playlists and all that stuff. And frankly, I'm just probably never going to learn it. But if you would help me with it, then we could do something. And that's the thing, is that if you're like me, if you really have some content that you really need to get out and you want to get it out there, then you gotta, I would say, reach for help. I mean, it's similar to the idea of secretaries. It's more important to have somebody that already knows how, to build a website, not to try to do it yourself. But also to ask for help, ask for help. And look what's happened to me. I must have looked like I needed a lot of help because George Webb started hanging around with me all the time and helping me over and over and over again. So if you have the kind of a feeling inside of you that you've got something that is important enough for you to dedicate your time, to studying, to reading, to preparing, then, you know, just do that and ask somebody else to help you with the rest of it. And, you know, that's been my key to what success I have here, is to just always ask other people, always reach out your hand, you know, and people will take it. It's a beautiful thing about humans.
That's a great answer, John. And your morning routine, how does that pan out usually, if there is one?
Oh, I wake up at 5:30, come downstairs, and make some coffee. I'm really big into oatmeal. Try to make oatmeal every day. Sometimes I just do some muesli, but oats is my primary breakfast food. And
What kind of oatmeal do you like to eat?
oh gosh, we're so lucky. We have an organic farm up the road here in Newburgh, and they grow oats. So what they do is they harvest the oats, and then they put them through the whatever it is, the thing that presses them, right, and they bag them up, and we can buy a bag of oats right off the farm. So that these are just delicious.
Wow,
They're just
excellent.
so good. And you know, we're just lucky that they're there.
No need to go to Whole Foods or
Well,
Walmart.
no, I mean, I do go to, we have a chain around here called Mom's, which is terrific for organic stuff too. And,
Okay.
and you know, that you can't get everything at the local farm,
Of course.
but to support that local farm, we buy everything we can there. They always got great stuff. They're growing all kinds of food there, but beans, you know, they're actually growing 8 or 9 different varieties of beans, which is wonderful. So beans, rice, we get rice from them. And we're pretty much vegetarians. So beans, rice, greens, oats, it's terrific. Things vary by the season, of course, but that's what we do. And then, but you know, as soon as I have my first sip of coffee, I'm over on the internet, and I'm except for Facebook banned me. I'd be on Facebook. I usually have some witty thing I want us to say. You know, when I first wake up, my mind is going like, no, oh wow, I'm gonna. This is a zinger. I'm gonna get them with this. You know, and so I had to get on Facebook and put this thing up there so all my liberal idiot. I mean, my extremely intelligent liberal friends get irritated. But that's not why I do it. I'm not trying to irritate. I really am trying to help people understand. And a lot of people, I think, are following me on Facebook, and hopefully understand how serious I am, and that I'm not just, you know, what they think of from the CNN caricature of people that are, you know, their enemies. You know, these hicks with it, or you know, Trumpers. You know, they make this caricature of people like they did to Orange Man. All right, let's not go there.
So you got your coffee, and then you got your oatmeal. Oatmeal before the computer, or you usually do a coffee computer session before you eat?
Coffee, computer, then about eight or so, I'll come in and make some cereal and eat that. My wife will be have already gotten her self together, and she has office, you know, in in the home now. So that's what happens then is she starts working at 9 o'clock or before 9 o'clock often, and then I come back and get into my studio area, and I'm on Twitter a lot. I have a Minefield show 4 days a week, except for, of course, when I can interview someone like George Webb or yourself. I'll do a Minefield show, and that requires some preparation. I've also gotten in the habit of looking at Harley Schlanger every morning with the LaRouche organization, because I think he's worth looking at regularly. So most days I look at him. I spend as much time as I can on Twitter and get caught up with what a lot of people are doing, like Bill Taylor and Harry the Greek and Mark Kulak. So many great commenters on Twitter. So I like that. I like to, put up a smart ass comment of my own now and then on Twitter, and but then I do my show at 11 o'clock, except for on Wednesdays. I don't do it. That's my day to go up to Mom's and get some more vegetables.
Okay, excellent. And what are the 3 most gifted books that you have given to other people? So 3 books that you have purchased with the intent of gifting them. What are the titles that come to mind?
Well, Servitors of Empire by Professor Hamamoto. I bought a big box of them with the intention of gifting them, and I've gifted all, but I think I have 2 left. But everybody here at the charrette has gotten one of those.
Well, I'll take another one, John, if you want to give it away. But
sure.
I have one, but I think it's in Michigan right now. It's either in Michigan or South Carolina.
You need one, in each of your various roosts around the world. So
thank you.
As soon as the show's over, I'll give you a new one.
Excellent.
The other one, of course, is TDY, which I bought a small box of them from Doug Valentine, and these are really unique. They're signed by him to me, and then I will then sign them again to the people that I've given them to. And I gave you one, didn't I?
I don't think I've gotten TDY.
Oh, okay. And Andy, can you reach around the corner there into the other bookshelf on the lower, and you'll see a bunch of TDYs. I'm going to give one to Addy.
Oh, wow. I'm getting this live on camera, folks. This is fantastic. I'm getting a Douglas Valentine book. This is a great, this is great. This is a classic. I know, I'm well aware of it. It being a classic, kind of has classic status in this kind of
Can
dark.
you find me a pen?
Dark underbelly of history. Book sphere, TDY and Douglas Valentine, kind of on the Mount Rushmore in many ways of this kind of nonfiction sphere we're in.
Well, TDY is the book that has completely solidified my understanding of my father and who he was at Saxa.
Wow, it's signed by the author.
Signed by Doug, and it says, to John O'Loughlin, son of Mr. Hammer, Douglas Valentine, 6th of April, 2020. And by Mr. Hammer, he refers to the character in the book that is called Mr. Hammer. It's a pseudonym, and Doug didn't know who Mr. Hammer was, but except for by his function and his appearance and his manner. And it was during one of my shows, maybe 6 months ago, that I was interviewing Doug. And Doug and I both realized at exactly the same time that Mr. Hammer was my father.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That is amazing.
So this book actually tells a story that my father was behind an operation run by some of the, I guess, the white hat good guys in the area against the CIA to film and photograph and record the CIA doing a major drug deal with the local drug lord in Laos, probably Vang Pao, but I'm not sure. That story fits exactly in with the historical record that Doug Valentine has studied so thoroughly. And with his confirmation, I now know something that I can be very, very proud of. And that is that my father stood up to the CIA, tried to stop their drug importation business, tried to prevent the stuffing of the bodies in the body bags with heroin, bringing them into the country. That is a legacy that I didn't know. It was through the work that we've done here at McDuff Channel to understand what really happened. And this book, Addy, is the proof of who my dad was, what his mission was in life, was to stop the CIA from their illegal and immoral and shameful importation of narcotics into this country.
Wow, that is so fascinating and such a kind of eureka moment there, John. That finding out that that connection that Mr. Hammer was your father was Thomas Francis O'Loughlin, and what John is referring to actually is if anybody has seen the movie American Gangster, which portrays Frank Lucas's kind of rise and fall. He was a black gangster from Harlem who was one of the main drug lords of the time, and in particular was the guy who was bringing in the heroin through the coffins during the period of Vietnam, and in that period when Americans were being flown back, their body bags were in their coffins were. So that was the means of transporting heroin from that part of the world into the United States. One of my favorite gangster films as well, but really a fantastic gift here from John. I was not expecting this at all. Really, I've been wanting to add this title to my. Thank you, John.
All right.
Thank you, John.
There you are, Addy.
Thank you so much. I've really been wanting to add this title to my library for some time now, and not only that, it's a personally inscribed from the author Douglas Valentine and from John O'Loughlin, and it's live on the internet right now, folks. I wanted to thank you so much for that, John.
And you can get that book from Amazon yourself. Doug approves of Amazon as his agent to sell them, so go there and get your own copy of TDY. It's a great read, and it's all what they call a Romana Clay, the truth hidden in a slightly fictitious form.
Wow, excellent. Yeah, and I encourage people to do that. Because there is cases. I don't know if it was this book. I think it was actually Secret Team by Fletcher Prouty, where the CIA just bought up every copy in circulation for a time period, so it was completely out of print.
That's true.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. But just a couple more questions here, if that's okay, John. I'm really enjoying this, and I hope we can do it again sometime. But who is your favorite interviewer that you like to listen to, or favorite voice that you like to listen to? If you have them on the background, or maybe audiobook reading, just for learning. Any favorite voice you like to listen to?
Well, it's George. That's the other thing that you don't notice about the things that contribute to a good presentation. I, as somebody who's run concerts and bands and know the importance of audio. Most people that go into this business, I've noticed, do not appreciate. I would still put audio at 90% and the visual stuff at 10%. So then the question is, does the person who's hosting the show or doing the talk, do they have a voice that people are going to want to listen to? Some people grew up speaking in a way that does not carry very well in over the air. It does not a pleasant voice to hear for over a long period of time. But if you notice, when you listen to George, you really don't get weary of his voice at all, because he, whether naturally or maybe he had some training, I don't know, but he has a very smooth, beautifully resonant vibrant voice that vibrates up here in the mask and gives you a kind of a soothing calmness that is fine. And so that opens you to receiving the content better than if you were trying to get the content from either someone who doesn't speak very well for broadcast purposes, or from a presentation that has not concentrated on the quality of the audio itself, which is more common of a barrier to me when I'm watching other people's video productions. So that I think is one aspect of George Webb's work that is kind of under the radar, but still very supportive of his content. He does a great job, and because of his content, that's the person I listen to the most.
I agree. He's got a fantastic voice for radio. And what would you say is your best purchase that you've made under $100, so $100 or less recently? Say this past 6 months or so.
Ooh, probably this mic stand right here.
Yeah,
yeah.
I was gonna guess it was probably some studio equipment.
Yeah, it's always studio equipment. The best purchase I made in the past year was the Rodecaster, which is Andy's operating it over there. It is fabulous. The quality of the sound is wonderful, and the versatility of it, where you can either take the feed off of a computer, you can send a wireless Bluetooth audio to it, you can plug a phone into it, and it has 4 channels of really excellent XLR audio and USB out, so you don't even need an audio, a digital analog converter of any kind.
In case people are interested, what is the model of that particular Rodecaster? And
that's just what it is. There's only one.
Okay, so that's the like $600 one, right?
Yeah, and it comes from Rode, RO with a slash through it, DE. They're Australian company, and very, very high quality.
Wow, excellent. And what is a place that you wish to visit, but you have not done so yet?
Spain.
Spain? Why Spain?
Oh God, I want to go to the Alhambra. I want to go to Sevilla. I want to sit at a cafe in Madrid and watch the world go by. I want to go to Barcelona. I want to walk all over the place. I want to go to the beach. I want to listen to Spanish musicians. I want to go down and listen to the flamenco. Watch them dance. I want to go to some places that are in my memory of playing. And I played Spanish music with some really wonderful Spanish musicians called the band was called Tuna de Albacin, and Albacin is a town or city in Andalusia, and that area, which I have in my mind from these wonderful musicians and the songs, I've never seen, and that's my answer: Spain.
Wow, I agree. I think that's definitely a spot that I would love to go to. I've been to the airport in Barcelona, but I don't count that. What is your favorite drive that you've ever made?
Oh, I don't like to drive. No, I don't have a. I can't remember any. I like to go on like everybody else does. I would love to say the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is a gorgeous, beautiful drive. And I remember it from being a kid, and we went, all the way to Atlanta almost and going to the Great Smoky Mountain Park and everything like that is beautiful. But the trouble is the traffic. you know, as you get behind a line of cars and all you're looking at is the RV in front of you. I don't know, Addy. I can't think of a drive that I took a lot of pleasure from recently. Sorry about that.
No, it's excellent. And yeah, I wanted to, since we're kind of focusing on not only your work history, but your kind of personal history as well, and writing as well is a huge books is a huge focus of your channel. So three authors that you find just at the current time your favorite before we sign off. Your three favorite authors you'd say at this point in time, which may change, right? But yeah, what are your three favorite writers?
Well, I'm just going to stick with my book train, and it's Fletcher Prouty. It's Jim Mars, and it's Stephen Kinzer.
Okay, wow, excellent. And I've heard of course, Kinzer and Prouty, and the other was Jim Mars, you said?
Yeah, Jim Mars.
Okay.
I'm reading from his last book, Population Control, in my 8 o'clock book readings. So again, with the charrette going on, my book readings have pretty much come to a screeching halt, but I did read last night from War Against the Weak by Edwin Black, and I will be reading more from Population Control by Jim Mars sometime in the near future.
Excellent. And as I mentioned this morning, actually, when I was on McDuff Lives, McDuff channel, his BitChute is up and running, and it is being updated. So please go to McDuff's BitChute, and we can put that in the description or the comment box below as well. And all of my links should be in the description box too. Please do give me a subscription if you could. My channel of nearly 5,000 subscribers was terminated at the end of 2020. So I wanted to try to rebuild that up. I got Rumble, brand new Tube, a BitChute, as I mentioned, UGE Tube, Minds, WeMe, Inked Social, Gab, Parler, and then of course Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as well. And we'll have all of John's links in the show notes too. And
John playing the fiddle to close the show out.
Sure, yeah, you can play that. Yeah, and I want to thank Andy DeBala for being our guy running point on the text as well, and really spicing up my channel and John's too. So, and John played the fiddle the other night for those that don't know. So I think Andy's gonna root us in here.
Battle of New Orleans from 8th day of January. Fired our guns and the British kept running down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, Andy Jackson took a little trip. Fired our guns. Fired our guns and the British kept running, and the Russians and the many as it left while I'm going. Fired our guns and the British kept running down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. The Battle of New Orleans.
There you have it,
And
folks.
never
There's
forget who
John
won that.
O'Loughlin on
Andrew
the
Jackson.
fiddle.
Where's our Andrew
Just
Jackson
rounding up
expression?
our interview today. This has been a fantastic interview. Got a great book inscribed by Douglas Valentine and John O'Loughlin. So got a great gift, and of course, the great privilege of having John O'Loughlin as being my first in-person and first full-length interview of 2021. And I would love to do a chat again soon, John. I really enjoyed this, and I wanted people to go and subscribe to John and check him out on not just YouTube, but Twitter and all the other channels as well. So I wanted to just thank you again for coming on my show, John.
It's been a real pleasure. Folks, let's make Addy Addikin the next great journalist of this country. Get behind him. Sign up for his Patreon, and support him in any way you can by urging your friends to subscribe as he battles back from his purge, as we have done here on McDuff channel. We support one another, and I want Addy to be a great success. So thanks again for everything you do, Addy, to help me and to help everyone else as we continue the fight for freedom.
Thank you, John. And we are broadcasting as well from McDuff Studios, as I'm coining it at the moment. So I want to thank John for hosting today as well. My name is Addy Addikin. I'm a public intelligence agent, interviewer, media publisher from the Midwest. And we are live from the East Coast, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in today on the show. And we will see you all next time. Stay frosty, folks.